is a mess, and my life is a mess to go with it a whole lot of the time. But when my granddaughter, Molly Kate, was born in June, it just thrilled me. I was having joy looking forward to it. I was thrilled to be involved in the goings-on around that. And I have been experiencing considerable joy ever since. Excuse me. So I know there must be a statute of limitation on these things. I know that joy has to run out. You know, you're not a new person anymore. You are a used one, and you're no longer that great. But for now, I'm still in the thrall of new grandfatherhood. Getting to know somebody that you love, that feel of being delighted by them, is always, I think, about the particulars of who they are. Is this a little close? I feel like I'm a little loud. No, the volume's good for people? Okay. It's always about the particulars of who that person is. It's not about a generic babyhood. It's about the little gestures and individual ways that an eye twinkles or a smile comes across. When we love and delight in someone, it's that special individual you-ness that captivates us. There are billions of human beings. Some would say billions too many. As Paul Simon sings, the planet groans every time it registers another birth. But each one of us is unique, and each one of us is irreplaceable. Each and every one of us is a gift of life. Some will say that a baby's birth is no miracle at all. That the birth of this particular baby is no miracle at all. In fact, we can explain through the laws of science the conditions of an expanding universe, an evolving planet, environmental niches, and natural selection. Maybe not the details of why this baby, but it all makes perfectly good sense, right? But if that explains babies, provided we add a part of an explanation that you're rarely going to hear explained on Sunday mornings in most churches, that involves how that baby came to be born to those two people, if we assume that part, it may explain babies, but it doesn't explain Molly Catherine. It doesn't explain what had to happen for her to be born as that little person. Among other things that had to happen for that baby to be born, I had to meet her grandmother on a sailboat in Oklahoma. And that's the tip of the iceberg. There are like 50 totally improbable things that had to happen for that. So think about your own life. Think about when you were born, where you were born, and who your ancestors are, and what had to happen just the way that it happened for you to be here at all as you. Because if someone else were here, it wouldn't be you, and you wouldn't be here if you were someone else, because you are only you, the irreplaceable person that's here among these gifts that each of us is. So it makes sense to me that each of us would take our life for granted in some ways. I just am my life. Everything I experience or do presupposes this me that is always already there. Yeah, I turned the volume down a little bit because I was hearing more popping, and I want to give Kirby a chance to find a volume that does that without the pop. I think this will work. Kirby can let me know, all right? Everything that I experience or do presupposes this me. And so taking that me for granted, in a way, is my natural attitude to regard my life as a given. But if my life is a given, who was it given to? There's one really obvious candidate for an answer, right? Well, it was given to me. It's my life. Sure, duh, obvious. Thank you, Captain Obvious. But the possessive here of my life is misleading. Is my life mine, like my coffee cup or my new Nina Simone CDs? Do I own my life like acquired property? Do I have a deed to my life, perhaps? No. Life was not given to me because before my life, there was no me to be given the life that I am. Now that's, on the one hand, strange. What are you talking about? You're sounding like a philosopher again. On another hand, because I have more than two, it's obvious. I'll say it again. My life was not given to me because there was no me for it to be given to until the life was there. That's obvious. So it's weird philosophy talk and it's obvious, but it's not the way we think about our lives. It's not the way we see our worlds. It's not the way our culture invites us to approach life. And so, if, as I suggest, life is a gift, given all that had to go into me being here at all, and if that gift was not given to me, I think something very profound follows from that. The gift of life was not a gift to me, it was a gift of me. I am the gift of life. You are the gift of life. Each one of you whom I could look in the eyes this morning, anybody there, each of us is that gift of life. So when I think of it in those terms, when I think of life not as a given, but as a gift, and when I think of myself not as the recipient, but as the gift, then it changes how I think and how I look at my own life. I certainly wouldn't want to squander the gift that I am. It's easy when I look in Molly Catherine's eyes to say, what a gift she is. What a halo come into a world in need of healing. But when do we cease to become that? As I enjoy watching Molly grow into her world, as that gift keeps giving day after day as she ages, what about the rest of us? Aren't we too a gift that keeps on giving? When do we age out of that status? There's no end to it. Just how I want Molly to feel as she grows into her world. There's no end to it. There's not a point at which I have to be a grown-up now and put away childish things. There's no point at which, at least in this sense, right? I would like my granddaughter to come into this world and to grow further into this world with the feeling that she in her life is what she ought to be and who she is, and that she belongs here. That whatever moves the spirit of life moved her to be here in this time, in this place, in this way, as the person that she herself is. That's what I want for my granddaughter. And it's what I want for myself. And it's what I would love to bring to each of you this morning in a sense of sermonizing. To see ourselves with that same joy that so exceeds the little word appreciation. That there's a thanksgiving that rises to the level of sheer delight. But how we see life and how we see our own lives is all shaped by our families, the larger cultures into which we're born. There are many, many factors that get inside us from a very early age and shape how we see ourselves, right? And so I want to, instead of just being uplifting about these things, I want to contrast the culture that Molly is being born into with a couple of other cultural perspectives. Let me begin from Viola Cordova, who was the first American Indian to get a PhD in philosophy, at least in this country. She was, I'm not at all going to pronounce this right,
But she Carrilla Apache,
mixed with Spanish Mexican descent. Her life was mostly unpublished, and she deliberately chose not to spend more than 3 years at any one university so that she would not be absorbed into that mindset. She was also an artist, and she must have had quite an impact on the people who knew her and who were familiar with her thought, because in 2002 she gave a talk at Oregon State University, and 1 week later died of an aneurysm. 1 week later after she gave that talk. Her family, remember, she was almost completely unpublished, though she'd written a dissertation. And her family put together computer disks, notebooks, unpublished things, put them in boxes, gave them, I'm pretty sure it was to Oregon State, and they said, here, do what you can. And I wanted to write a thank you note to the people that put this book together. And it delighted me so to think that here was a woman whose culture was alien, completely alien, to every single standard of American academia. She rightly characterizes the American education system as authoritarian, and if one were to get into the niceties of higher education, if one were to get into what blind review means as opposed to relationship, if one were to get into all the objectivities that we so celebrate. I have a PhD, by the way. I know what I'm talking about. I was denied tenure, too, which means I know a little bit differently what I'm talking about. But I so revel in the fact that she chose to be herself and to express her thought and engage and promote and share her thought in her ways, and that so moved people that after her death, her gifts kept giving, because she moved other people to bring that together into a gift for me in the form of that book. How is it? How it is the title of the book, where she shares her perspective, which she sees in so many respects as common with other Native Americans, even from other sovereign nations. So what I want to draw out of that, and what I want to contrast with our culture and how we see life, if we begin by asking, well, I asked before, if life is a gift, who is it to? So suppose you flip the question, well, who is it from? If life is a gift, right? Well, for some people, there's a pretty obvious answer. Mother Earth. And our inclination as enlightened Westerners who are not primitive is to understand that phrase as a symbol. And for those of you who are stupid or haven't gone to college far enough and don't know what a symbol is, let me tell you what a symbol is in condescending terms, okay? So you'll all understand. A symbol isn't literally real. That means it isn't exactly like that. But it's similar to, in a way that resembles an important feature of the thing. So Earth isn't really a mother, we all know that. But Earth generates life in ways that are kind of like a mother, and so Earth is a good symbol of life. And that's what Mother Earth is. Viola Cordova did not see Mother Earth as a symbol in that sense. And she has a great little thing there where she's talking about explaining that perspective, that way of looking at it, to articulate college students who are Native American. It's like, no. So she challenged him, well, then, what's wrong with that analysis? And she quotes the answer that one student gave. Mother Earth is not a symbol. The Earth brings us into existence, literally. Our own mothers, our biological mothers, are the vehicle through which the Earth spews forth another creation. And so we have to get away from thinking about these motifs that are crucial to the understanding of where we come from, the matrix of the world in which we're embedded, the gift of life that we are. We have to get away from reducing those to just symbols or myths in the larger sense for things. In the book, How It Is, she goes on to explain something that follows from a question that I think is really a good way to put it. What would it be like to live in a world that we considered a living being? What would it be like to live in a world that we considered a living being? Would 60% of the known species disappear within that time period? Well, I don't want to give you a lecture. It's Sunday morning. That's not time for a lecture. But starting from that question, what would it be like to live in a world that we considered a living being? She suggests that with the assistance of the entire group, a child learns to become a human being according to how the group defines human being. If I'm growing up in this culture, I'm going to have a very different understanding of what it means to be human. So if I live in a culture that sees the earth as a living being, I'm going to have a very different sense of myself as a human being, won't I? She tells a great story about two mothers who are both mothers for the first time. They have similar aged babies, and they're taking them to the park. And one is Native American, the other is non-Native. And so the two women are going to the park, and one woman has packed in all the car seats and blankets and toys and all the other things, and the other one just has her baby. You're going to have to guess which is which through part of the story. So they get to the park, and one of the mothers lays out the blanket very carefully. He's like, here are the toys, and this. No, don't touch that. No, don't go off on the dirt. No, that's dirty. You don't want to go. And the other one gets down with her baby, and the baby starts crawling around a little bit. She's there, and she's just being there with the baby. So this is what she has to say about that. The non-Native American mother introduces her child into a potentially hazardous and alien environment. She offers him safe alternatives through the presence of the blanket and the toys. Everything else is dirty. My grandson, on the other hand, is encouraged to touch, taste, and explore a new and delightful place. How could she let that baby taste something off the blanket? And she says, this is the stuff of which a worldview is built. Way before we have language, this is how we understand our worlds. Without language, without explanation, each of the young women is saying to their infant, this is where you live. So a very different sense of where you live. As she puts it in her credo statement, humans are not fallen creatures. They are what Earth intended. Most of all, they fit in this world because they are products of it. A sense of alienation from the world and its many beings would not, in this context, be seen as the common malady of individuals, but as a psychotic disruption, an illness. The normal would be to see yourself as belonging to, as included, as part of a group, as part of a people, as part of a world, a matrix of Mother Earth. I was tempted to change they to we, except I realized I couldn't do that because she's talking about human beings. And not just in the sense that in Little Big Man, as I recall the movie, the Native American person says their name for their own people is the human beings, right? But I say that I hold back from equating human beings with biological Homo sapiens here, or Homo sapiens sapiens, right? Because we're doubly smart. Anyway. I hold back from that because she says that we are born with the potential to become fully human, but that we aren't human beings in the full sense until we have recognized and acknowledged the context in which we live, can engage others in a way that's respectful and responsive. And until then, we're not human beings. As a matter of fact, the trickster image of Coyote, who figures so prominently in many Native American tales, she says, Coyote is the image of the not fully human. I found that fascinating. Anyway, her account of a human world is a world where we are not alienated, where that would be psychosis. Quite a contrast. And one that makes me feel that what I was grappling with and groping toward in all my years of doing philosophy and feeling not at home with the authoritarian education system and with the worldviews that have devastated our planet was something like the sense of being at home that Native American experience speaks to, which maybe is what brings a tear up so many times when I'm singing Blue Boat Home, and it comes to that line of home, that feeling of home, that feeling of this is a place that I belong. So I want to bring now a very different cultural contrast. I just picked this book up yesterday. No, it was Friday night, by the way. I was talking about all the coincidences that has to happen. There are other coincidences that have to happen to completely change the course of a sermon, and for you all to hear something completely different to take with you this week. I had a devastating week of work. A friend of mine had lent me a copy of the Paris Review from 1990s and said, oh, you gotta read this thing on this interview with Ken Kesey. But there's also a story in there that's really, really neat. So always stayed with me. So I read the story. It was called Snakes. If I'd known I was going to share this, I'd have written down who the author was. But it was a Native American story. And it was wonderful. And I was so resonating with that I had this and a few other things around it. I said, let me just start reading that. And so now I'm going to turn to what I just finished reading in a couple of weeks before that. A very different perspective. Ta-Nehisi Coates writes of his African-American life in urban America with a brilliance and a humanity and a fire. We Were 8 Years in Power is one of the books I finished recently. The other was his memoir, deliberately and modeled on James Baldwin, Between the World and Me. Like Viola Cordova, Coates is confronted by a world that is not his, but that he has to live in. And it's not just someone else's world, but it's a world that was built on hostility to people who looked like him. Now, again, I'm not going to give a sermon about that. I'm not going to make the argument, but I want to say this. If you want to challenge that characterization, if you want to understand that characterization, and you've read all kinds of stuff I have, and I am talking down to you, and I shouldn't. All I really need to be doing is saying there's one thing in this book that I would have everybody who's capable of reading at this level read, and that is the case for reparations. I don't know which year it is or whatever else. But I found it to be so lucid and compelling, a clear, logical, historical argument how one thing leads to another thing. And because of that, we are nowhere near free of our heinous history. So even if I'm not a racist and you're not a racist, even if nobody I know is a racist, that stuff got built so deep in the foundations of American culture, it isn't coming out anytime soon. So what I want to focus on in bringing him up here is not all those arguments, but what it's like for him. For him writing to his son, who's a teenage boy, young man by now, I'm sure. What he's writing about his experience of what it's like. This is in his notes from the 5th year. I love the format of this book. He took a piece that he'd written, I think they're all for the Atlantic Monthly, from each year, but prefaces each of those pieces with his notes from that year, his kind of thoughts and reflections on what was going on and how it came to that. And The 5th year was the year he wrote Fear of a Black President. The 8 years, by the way, those are the years of the Obama presidency. And the title recalling Reconstruction. And this blew my mind, the way he wrote this, because the perceptiveness in this, anyway. So I want to share in his voice. There was a time when I believed in an arc of cosmic justice, that good acts were rewarded and bad deeds punished, if not in my lifetime, then in the by and by. I acquired this belief in cosmic justice at the vague point in childhood when I began to cultivate, however rudely, a sense of right and wrong. Tragedy is an unnatural fit on me. My affinity angles toward bedtime stories, fairy stories, and preposterous romance. I would like to believe in God. I simply can't. The reasons are physical. When I was 9, some kid beat me up for amusement. And when I came home crying to my father, his answer, "Fight that boy or fight me," was godless. Because it told me that there was no justice in the world, save the justice we dish out with our own hands. When I was 12, 6 boys jumped off the number 28 bus headed toward Mondawin Mall, threw me to the ground and stomped on my head. But what struck me most that afternoon was not those boys, but the godless heathen adults walking by. Down there on the ground, my head literally being kicked in, I understood no one, not my father, not the cops, and certainly not anyone's God, was coming to save me. The world was brutal. Once I thought that there was something black in this, something about the streets. Then I learned that nations were atheists, which is to say they find their strength not in any God, but in their guns. The code of the streets was the code of the world. That just shook me. That just shook me. Because it just shook me. And when you think about what it would be like to live in that world, you could think that Coates isn't able, as I was speaking before, to see life as a gift, but it's worse than that. Because he sees better than I do most days the gift of life. What he sees is a world where that gift can be stolen, destroyed, snatched away capriciously, not by an uncaring universe, but by that culture that was built on hostility to him. What a world to have to live in, huh? If life is a gift, if his life is a gift, if his son's life is a gift as much as my mom's is, it's hard to think about our world that way, isn't it? It's very hard for me. At the same time, I think of the gifts that each of us is, of the gifts in this room. I think of this service today, so beautifully put together. Thank you, Carol. I think of the awareness we have, old or young. I think of what we want. And I think instead of focusing on what isn't right, there's no end to that. We want to change what we can, but we can only change what we can from where we are and who we are and when we are. We can't pretend to be something we're not, right? So what I want to say, what this sermon wants to end on, is that just like Molly, we are all here because we belong here. You are here because you belong here. You are when you were and how you are and who you are. And that is as it should be. And so whatever moves the spirit of life, moved you to be you.